So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in this webinar. So the purpose of the webinar is to present to you the evolutions that were made to VTS Editor in this 6.1 edition. I'm Julien KOKKINOS. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Cirrus Factory, and I have the pleasure to be joined today by Yannick Audeoud. Yannick, I'll let you present yourself.
Yes, I'm the product owner of VTS Editor, so I'm in charge of getting all the feedbacks from the clients and organize the roadmaps and developments of the product.
Perfect, thank you. So basically what we're going to show you today is VTS Editor. Most of the new features, improvements, optimizations. Feel free to ask questions during the webinar and not necessarily at the end, because we're going to see a bunch of things. So you don't forget, if you have any question, you have a space dedicated to that. And Yannick or myself will be happy to answer any and every question you may have. Yannick, I'm going to give you control so that you can show VTS Editor to everyone. Oh.
Yes, so do you see my screen now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So thank you for being here. We will see a lot of things today. Of course, in this new version, as Julien said, there is a lot of new improvements, new options, etc. The goal of this release was really to give the user a lot of new tools to be very more efficient and gain time during the creation of projects in VTS Editor. There is a little, if you go to in the new version to the release note, you have also access to it online. You may see more than 200, I think, new features on new options, fixes, and so on. Have any skill, any media in the media manager, any character in the scene, no block everywhere. So it's the really start from scratch project if you really want to. When we enter a project now, we will see some new options in the general settings of the project. If you remember, before this version, you had in the options here, so I mean the main parameters here, you had two tabs, normal options, like classic options, and advanced options. We now have a lot of new options, so we had to create this advanced option panel with every options relative to with a global impact on the project. And you have a sort bar here. If you know the name of your option, you can search it like that and find it very easily. And there is also some sections if you prefer. So what is new in this options section? The first one I want to show you is the progress bar option. You were already able to create a progress bar with clickable zones, variables, and the fill options of the clickable zones. But this option allows you to create a progress bar very easily and automatically. So if I activate this bar, I choose some custom color, here green. And when I go in my graph, I have an example here of one graph using this option. It's a simple chain of progress and message block. Each progress block makes the progression status advance in the scenario. And if I hit play, with the progress bar option activated, it displays at the top of the screen like that. So it's a very simple display, and you can customize the color, but it's really easy to implement in your project instead of creating, for example, some clickable zone block with a zone that you could place on the screen like that and change the fill amount here. So it's another way to do it. Another type of new options that you have here. It's the volume, the audio volume. You have several sliders here with which you can control the volume of the different type of sounds in your project. The main one may be the voices volume. So if you, for example, you recorded all the voices outside VTS Editor, and you realize once you imported it that all the voices are too loud or too low, you can change the volume here globally for all the project. You also have a slider for other types of sounds, the video sounds, the scores, when you gain some points or lose some points through an interactive block, etc. And if you want to have a more fine control on each character or each media, you can use the volume slider in the media manager for the sound here. It's one example. You have a volume slider that will affect globally the volume of this sound specifically in all its usage in the project. So you don't have only the main volume slider for all the sounds, you have one volume slider for each element. Same thing for the characters. If I go here in the characters, you have an button here to edit the details of the characters, or by clicking on the preview, and you can change the volume of the voice just for this character. This is a more detailed panel than before. You can find the languages and the voice. This is not new compared to the previous version. It's just the UI that changes, but you have the volume that is a new feature, and you also have seen here the thumbnail. You can change this for any media in your media manager, because by default, when I say no media, it uses the image of the character you have chosen. If you choose another image, and you can also change the color, it will change the render of the character in the scene. It will affect the subtitles of the character and the conversation history. So for example, I will create some speak block here just to show you the effects. I choose this character as a voiceover, so he's not visible in the scene. I make him speak a little, and I hit play without generating the voices. And we can see the effect on the subtitles here. We saw the image and the color that I chose in the character details here. When you create a new character, if you are currently editing a scene, that's the case here, when you close the characters page, VTS Editor will now ask you if you want to insert this character into the scene. So this is one example of what VTS Editor does now when you do some very common actions like creating a new character. Most of the time you may want to insert it in the scene just after that. So this is a shortcut. It also allows new user to discover VTS Editor and to use it more easily when they don't know really what are the different steps, creating the character, opening the scene, edition, inserting the character, etc. So it inserts it in the first available spot in the scene, but you can move it afterwards or remove it if you don't want it finally. So this is for the characters. Before going into the details of the graph, new things about the graph, I will just speak about the texts and voices. What's new here? Yes, the first thing I want to show you that the empty texts are not displayed anymore. That it means that when you create a new project, you may not have filled every text input, so it won't display a lot of empty text. Same if you don't use a field, for example, you create a sentence choice block, you may not fill the title. if you don't use it, it will not appear as empty in the text list here. So it's only the text you have filled yourself and written yourself that are visible here. You also have new options about the pronunciations of the text. This is the possibility of changing the spoken text, of differentiating the written text and spoken text is not new, but what is new here is that if you have modified some of them, you can easily find them by checking this box, and it will filter and show only the text, spoken text that have a pronunciation modified. You can also delete all of them if you want to. You can search only in pronunciations. So in the search engine, before you could search in all text, on retail text only, and now you can search in the pronunciations only if you want. Next, about the import. When you export text, this creates an Excel file. You modify it outside the project, and when you import it back, you may have some errors because maybe you deleted some text in the Excel files, or maybe your projects evolved after the export, so you added some new text. So there will be differences between the imported Excel file and the project. So when I import it, here I have some errors, how many texts have been affected by the import, and here are the errors in orange. It was already present in the previous versions, but now you can also see what are the errors precisely. This information shows you what are the texts that are in excess in the imported files. This means texts that are not anymore in the project. Maybe you deleted some speak block, so you miss 3 texts that are in the project in the file, but when you import, they do not match any text. And the other window here is what texts were in the project are currently in the project, but not in the file that you imported. So maybe you did not delete a speak block, but you added a new one. So this text has not been affected by the file you imported. We also made a small improvement on the lips movements of the characters. When you generate the voices, you also generate the lips movement, which changes the technology we used here. So you may notice a small improvement on the lips synchronization with the spoken text. Just a word about an optimization we did on the voices. When you change a spoken text, for example, I change the spoken text here, I lose the generated voice. It was a synthetic voice. But if I go back and set the same text again, it finds back the voice. This was already in the previous versions, but what's happening here is that the file of the voices are not deleted until you publish the project. They are still on your computer. This could lead before to very huge projects with a lot of obsolete voice files remaining into the project. So this obsolete voice are now deleted when you publish, or also when you export the project from the homepage of VTS Editor. Like here, for example, when I export, it will also clean all the obsolete voice that you don't need anymore. So your project doesn't go bigger and bigger all the time. It's not a huge issue most of the time, but for some users with thousands of texts and a lot of work being done, it could lead to very big projects. So now we will go into the graph, I think. What is the first thing I would like to show you is when this is a very simple navigation example of several groups. I have G1, 2, 3, 4, 5. this one has 3 outputs linked to 2, 3, and 4, and this one has the 3 groups entering it in one input. So how do I navigate through this graph in the editor? If I am in G1, we can see the 3 outputs to G2, 3, 4, and this was already before in the previous version. You can go from left to right and navigate through your graph like that. But you can also go from right to left, and this is the new thing. If I am in G3, it's simple because there is only one link going in, so I can hit this button and it will go in the first group. But if I am in G5, you see there is a problem because there is several input groups. So there will be a drop-down menu to choose from to where you want to go. It's the same here in the breadcrumb trail here. You can see all the groups at the same level of the one you are in. Same for the scenes or the scenario. Here I have only one, but if I had several scenes or several scenarios, I could choose to which one I want to go. Still in the navigation, you have a new shortcuts. Everything that I'm speaking about from now about shortcuts in the graph, you can find in the release note. So it's in the main menu here, release note. If you don't have to take notes right now, it's also in the documentation. You have a page with all the shortcuts of VTS Editor if you want to find them back. So the shortcut I want to show you here is how you can create some bookmarks in your graph. You just have to select one block, hit the Alt and any number above the letters, like Alt 3, and then anywhere in the graph I can hit Control 3 and it will go back here on this block. I could be in a speak block. In the parameters, I hit Control 3 on my keyboard and it will close the windows and go back to this block here. This can be very useful if you have big projects with a lot of groups and subgroups, and you have 2 or 3 main points between which you navigate a lot instead of going in the history here and the location and opening groups, several groups to go where you want to go. You can use this, create your own shortcuts to navigate through the graph. You have 10 digits above the letters on your keyboard, so you can create up to 10 bookmarks in your project. Also, for people using other softwares aside VTS Editor, you may want to invert the 2 clicks, left and right clicks in the graph. By default, the rectangular selection is on the right click and the panning of the graph is on the left click. You can now invert this behavior with this option, inverted clicks in the graph in the VTS Editor configurations. It's in the main menu, option sections, and VTS Editor configuration. This can be very useful if you are used to use other software in which the clicks are not in the same way than VTS Editor. Another useful shortcuts, it's not yet visible in the UI because it would be it's too much of a detail for now, but we will think about how.
Yannick, I don't think we hear you anymore. Not sure if I'm the only one. Sorry, everyone. Probably a technical issue.
It's okay.
You're back.
It's okay. You hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for that. Yeah, I lost my connection. I don't know why. Okay, so I was speaking about a shortcut here on the empty blocks. You can now invert the direction of the blocks. Very useful because this kind of situation happens a lot. Here you can hit Control B and it will reverse the empty blocks. So you can have a graph that reads more easily. You can also have a multi-selection and Control B again, and it will invert all the selected empty blocks. What next about the shortcuts? Still in the shortcuts and in the graph, maybe you knew how to create a new empty block with Control E. It's now changed to Shift E because we have a lot of other shortcuts to create other blocks like Shift S, Shift W, Shift X, Shift C, and V to create some really common blocks, speak, message, and for people using a lot of variables, you may want to use conditions on variables a lot. So this is very simple shortcuts to create quickly your graphs. Of course, like I said before, all these shortcuts are available in the release notes or the documentations to remind you of them. Another thing is the color of the links. You already knew how to change the color of a group block. You can change the color of a note block, but you can also change the color of one link. So for example, here, I may want to color in green the best path in the graph. So the perfect path, for example, I may have a graph with 10 quizzes and I want to color in green the perfect path if my learner chooses always the right answer to every interaction, every quiz, every question I ask him. You can choose any other color in the color palette here. And you just have to choose how you want to use it. There is no guidelines. There is no good way to use it. It's up to you to choose what colors fits your needs, what you want, how you want to use this feature. The example I gave before is already in use for some users at Earth Factory. The coloring green the perfect path. So you see what is the normal path for someone doing all the perfect answers, and every other path is an optional path if you choose, for example, if you choose a wrong answer or if you choose an optional path in the graph that you don't have to play all the time to finish the scenario. Just one side note about the note attached to the blocks. Maybe you knew that you can hit the key N to create a new note here, a new note attached to the block. But now this note can be very long. It was limited before to 200 character. It can be longer. So if you didn't use it because of the limit, size limit, you can now use it again to explain what you are doing in the graph for yourself or for your colleagues. Just a few notes about the speak block here. There is two things to know. The first one is not only about the speak block. You can hit the Control N shortcut to create new lines. So for example, I can hit Control N, create another text, and only with the keyboard I'm creating new sentences. So it can be really easily instead of switching between the keyboard and the mouse all the time. And this shortcut, is also available in most of the blocks with a list of elements. Here it's a list of reply in the speak block, but it could also be new variables here. I hit Control N and it creates new variables here. In the split block, another option is the delays at the end of the sentence. This is a new option allowing you to specify how many time should be, what is the delay between two sentences. For example, between this one and this one, if I want 1 second or 0.5 seconds of delay between them, I can specify it here. It's easier than, it's a shortcut instead of creating something like a wait block here of 0.5. I could do that, but I can also do it directly into the split block here. This delay, it can also be negative like that. What does it mean? It means that the second sentence will start 0.5 seconds before the end of this one. This means that if there are two characters speaking, the second character can cut the sentence of the previous character. This will erase, this will replace its subtitle, the previous subtitle. So and it will also cut the sentence. The two characters won't start speaking together at the same time. The previous one will cut himself in its sentence. So most of the time you won't need to have more than 0.5 or 1 second, minus 1 second of delay here if you want to use it in this way. By default, every delays are 0. It means that it works like before with the same delays between the sentence as the previous versions. And if you just don't check this this option, it won't appear and it won't change the behavior of the block. A small passage in the clickable zone now. A few things in the clickable zone, a few new features, tools, shortcuts as usual. If you create a new zone, for example, test zone and another test2 zone, I change the style, the color style of this zone, and maybe I want to duplicate the style on a list of other zones. I can create the style again in each zone as before, but I can also copy this zone with Control C and hit Control Alt V to paste only the style on any other zone. So you don't have to duplicate the zone and change all its properties afterwards. You don't have to make the same style here again. It's not only the color, it's also text alignments, the font size, the padding, right, left, top and bottom, etc. All the configuration about the style and visual of the zone, except the main media, are copied with and passed with this shortcut. There is a few other shortcuts that you could see in the release note or the documentation about the clickable zones. You can duplicate only the size and position or several other ones. We won't see all of them right now. Another cool new things in the clickable zone, if you use them a lot. For example, here I have one clickable zones block with 10 zones, or there are used only one in the project. But if I duplicate this block, for example, 3 times, I have now 4 reference to each of these zones. If I open this block, I could select this zone, and now I want to know where this zone is used in my scene. This button here allows you to do exactly that. If I hit this button, I can now find the 4 places in my scene where this zone is referenced. So you can find them more easily and go to them by clicking on the arrows as usual. Still in the zones here, you have no layer system. It's a little bit like Photoshop. If a layer is above another one, like 1, it will be displayed. All the zones in the layer 1 will be displayed above all the zones in the layer 0. This layer can also be negative. If you want to, for example, -2, all the zones here the zones in this layer will be displayed below, under all the zone in the default layer, which is 0. The layer is affects all the zones in the block. So you won't have different layers between different zones in the same block. But if you want, for example, just one zone displaying behind all the other zones, it's very simple. You create the zone in a block and you set -1 or minus what you need, and it will display properly behind all the zone without the need to re-display all the previous zone on the top of the new zone you created. So this can be very useful in this kind of case. Small shortcut here: when you move a zone around with the arrow keys, you can keep the arrow key pressed, and you can hit Shift and the arrow to move faster. This can be useful to move only in one direction and not losing the alignment of the zone in the other direction, for example, if you move with the mouse. This is for the clickable zones. A few last things before the end of this demo, and then we can answer any question you want. A few last comments about the drag and drop blocks to start with. If you create this kind of block, you may want to show the learner which were the right and wrong choices he made. So, for example, if you have 4 elements to set in 2 different groups, when the learner validates the block, you may want to let this new option activated, so it will highlight in green the right choices made by the learner and highlight in red the wrong choices. So if you don't want this, as before, you can uncheck this option, and it won't show the user which were the right and wrong choices. A last comment about variables. I won't go too deep into the details in variables because it can become very technical, but you may want to, when you create a lot of variables in your graph, you may have some errors if you typed the wrong name, or you misused some variable. So we have added some new warnings. For example, here I create a new blank project. I add a new variable blocks with 3 variables, ABC, with some value. And if I search for the errors in the project with the suggestion system, this will detect that variables A, B, and C are not used. This is one kind of new warning that you can have. If a variable is not used, this may be a problem, because either it is a variable that is obsolete and you can delete it, either it should be used somewhere and you did not use it. You maybe used another variable instead, so your algorithm may be broken in some way. So this kind of warning, it can be very useful to point out some mistakes or something that may most probably be wrong in the graph. That's it. That's one example of a new kind of warning about the variables. I'm arriving to the end of this presentation. If you have, we could go deeper in some elements, but if you have some questions for us, we are happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Yannick, for this presentation. We do have a question. Can you change clickable zone layers by variables?
It's not possible yet. It's a good idea, but no. For now, it's only this input field right here, and there's no way to change it with a variable.
but
That's
I
good
can,
idea, yes.
I
Yeah.
can hear the excitement in Yannick's voice, so it's definitely gonna go on the roadmap for sure.
Yes. Yeah, it's not the system exists now, so making it modifiable with variable is not a big development. Yeah.
Awesome. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask. If not, thank you very much for your time this morning. We hope this demo was instructive, that you could discover the gist of VTS Editor 6.1. Like Yannick stated, you have a release note on which you can find, that we see on screen, perfect, on which
Yeah.
you can find all the new developments. And as you can see, there are many. And of course, you have your customer success team that can also accompany you and answer any question you may have. All
Great.
right, so I think we're good.
Thank you very much, and have a good time with VTS Editor.
Yes, enjoy, and thank you again for your time. We're at your disposal if you need anything.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.